Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Off Air podcast for the second instalment of this brand new series, in which the previous episode did feature us three and our predictions for the upcoming season following Maidstone United. In this second edition, we're going to be looking at the wider National League, giving our thoughts on the relegation candidates, those battling for promotion and the playoffs, and of course those going for the league title, along with a couple of individual awards along the way. If you haven't seen the first instalment of this brand new series to the channel, then do go and check that out as well. If you're not a Maidstone fan, you may learn a little bit more about what to expect when it comes to playing us in the National League this season. Of course, we have been out for a little while now, so you may not know too much about the Stones, so that is your opportunity to go and find out a little bit more. With me today are, of course, my two guests from the previous podcast, Sean Skur. Welcome, Sean.
Howdy.
And Nigel Seeger as well.
Hi there.
And one kind of removal from the last podcast, since he didn't give us any predictions for the National League, is Connor as well, but he will be joining us in a week or two, and hopefully we can get some thoughts off him then. But he's a little bit busy at the moment, so he's given us some Maidstone predictions, which we've included in the last podcast. But yeah, as for now, it's just us three. Hopefully that will suffice, and we'll be able to bring you a decent all-round show. So, talking the National League, of course, it is our first time back in the National League for a few years now, following our relegation a few years back. Obviously, completely new squad, new management team as well, so hopefully we're going to see something a little bit different from the Stones this time, following, of course, some of the perhaps poor planning in place when it comes to the longevity in the league last time round. We're a little bit more stable now in terms of our direction, and hopefully that will show in our results this season. But we'll start off with relegation right at the bottom of the table, and we'll work our way up through the league. As I said, we are just going to be covering the relegation and the playoff spots, and of course the league as well in this video. The middle of the table would take quite a long time and is anybody's guess, so we'll kick straight on with relegation, and I'll start first. And for me, the team who is going to be finishing bottom of the National League this season is unfortunately going to be Maidenhead United. So Maidenhead, 24th position for me. I think they've kind of been buying their time a little bit in the National League for the last few years. They've not really been progressing in terms of their performances in the league. They're kind of averaging that kind of lower mid table. And I think, considering they've just lost their top scorer last season in Josh Kelly, I think that is going to see them just plummet straight to the bottom of the table. They have made a couple of decent signings, but nothing that really stands out too much for me. I was quite impressed with Aweka, the signing they did bring in. But of course, he's not a senior player, he's unproven, and it's really going to be anybody's guess how he does perform in the league this season. But for me, that is going to be my 24th position in the league. First team to be relegated, Maidenhead United. So Sean, what about yourself?
I will admit, Joe, I've not got a exact science to my bottom four, but certainly Maidenhead is one of my picks for the bottom four. And I think it's something that we're all in a bit of an agreement of, frankly, as well. It's the fact that about 9 days ago, I think it was, that he signed for an undisclosed fee for Solihull Moors. And again, we discussed off air and on the previous edition of the podcast, is just the ludicrous spaffing, I'll use that term again, of money around, because he's tied to a 3-year contract, which is absolutely unheard of at this level, which if you've banged in the goals for Maidenhead the last year or two, then why wouldn't you go and support yourself and your family for the next 3 years up in the Midlands? So that is a key loss for them. Lots of other players from last season don't really seem to have stuck around. Torquay United signed Sean Donnellan from Maidenhead as well. He'd been there the last 2 seasons, so he's not available for them either. They've signed a French goalkeeper, Alexis Andre Jr., not a name that immediately springs to mind. So certainly Maidenhead for me would be one of those would be likely to see in the bottom 4 this season, Joe. And it's unfortunately, again, the expansion of their squad has not taken place, or at least certainly keeping up with replacing who they had in their last season that got them their decent finish. A lot of it's down to the loss of Josh Kelly, but there are a lot of squad players that have gone and seemingly not been replaced over the course of the summer months. So for my money, I would agree with you there. Maidenhead are one of my four that will likely go down this season.
Yeah, I think as you mentioned there, obviously kind of the failure to replace at least with guaranteed results. They have brought players in that could perform in terms of filling the boots of players that have departed, but really there's no guarantees. I think they're going to be relying on someone that's come from a couple of divisions below to actually score the goals for them this season. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's the case. So again, it's really just unproven players who are going to have a lot of kind of weight on their shoulders in terms of keeping a team up. And I think, as you mentioned, kind of the squad just isn't quite strong enough for me. So what about you, Nigel?
Yeah, I'll echo all of what you just said. Really, I've got Rainhead to finish bottom. They have had a bit of a reputation the last few years of being so-called giant killers and beating teams like Chesterfield, Halifax, and that on their own patch. But there's only so long you can carry that on. You've got to be you bread and butter of the teams that are in and around you, and they don't seem to get the results against those teams. So for me, yeah, I can't see no more than them finishing bottom at this stage. So that's why I've got Maidenhead 24th.
Yeah, another thing that I've actually got written down is something that you brought up there. Obviously, their ability to beat the bigger teams. I think last season they managed to beat some of those top half teams, or top third teams. I think they managed to actually win 7 games against teams in the top third. But when it comes to the bottom third, I think they only managed to win 6. So, it's just not sustainable. The big teams have got even bigger this season. Spent more money, improved all their squads, and they're all going to be fighting for the exact same thing this season. So they're going to have to win every game. Whereas last season, obviously, some teams are kind of going through that transition or maybe not backing themselves for a title shout and quite comfortable playoff finish. So, yeah, I think what you're saying there is pretty accurate. So, Maidenhead, pretty much the bottom team for all three of us, unfortunately for them. Hopefully, none of us get beat up over it or anything when we do attend. I'm sure they'll be more than happy to see us when we go there next season. But also, a little thing of note from the last podcast, if you are watching this one straight after, I promise we don't all just wear the same clothes all the time. We are filming this one straight after, so I can't speak for the others, but for me at least, I'm just recording straight after. So, yeah, don't worry about that. I'm sure we kind of change clothes every now and then, but don't be surprised to see me in a black t-shirt on every podcast. As for 23rd in the league, again, I know Sean hasn't got exact positions down, but for me, I have put Gateshead in there again. When it comes to relegation, I think it's kind of, the position isn't obviously going to matter. You're going down anyway, so when it comes to relegation, this is just another team I've put there. The position could change, of course, by a couple, but for me, going down is going to be Gateshead. For me, the simple reason is because last season in the National League North, they played incredibly attacking football. I think they ended up scoring like 99 goals or something last season. And their squad in an attacking sense has been absolutely decimated. They've lost their 2 highest goal scorers, both gone to, I think, Notts County in Langstaff and someone else I can't quite remember, but they've just been...
Between Scott or something like
that. Yeah, they've just been absolutely battered in terms of their attacking force, and when they rely so heavily on an attacking style of play, the transition it's going to take to kind of adapt to the National League, where they can't come and play that football, especially with the loss of these players, they're going to have to now adapt to a more defensive style. And considering they didn't rely too heavily on that last season, it's going to be really interesting to see how a defence that wasn't necessarily tested to such a great extent last season is going to cope with a lot more defensive duties this season in the National League. So for me, that is going to be a big reason as to why Gateshead do go down. So what about you, Sean? Who is your next team in the relegation zone?
Well, I think it makes sense rather than me picking the spots. You can do it and we can follow up, because I also do have Gateshead for very similar reasons, because, good half, at least, the goals that Gateshead scored come from those 2 aforementioned players. I have a soft spot for Gateshead, of course, being a Newcastle fan myself, away the lads. We do send a lot of players there. Mike Williamson did a fantastic job there as player coach last season, a veteran of some of the early years in the Mike Ashley era. You've got Tom Allen up front for them. You've got Ollie Bailey in midfield. Williamson in defence. Langley's joined on loan, one of our youth goalkeepers again this season. for them. But again, you look at some of the prospects they've got, some of them relatively young players in their squad again, and it's always a difficult transition from North or South to the top flight. A lot of teams, I'd probably say it's about a 50-50 shuffle, to be honest, in terms of it's the toss of a coin whether you stay up or not from your first season. And but a lot of players, certainly from League One, will want to come down and play. But again, big catchment area, Gateshead. It's a shame that we all think that probably that they're going to get relegated. But when you lose that higher percentage of your goals from your squad from last season, like we've already said for Maidenhead, the way that you play, will Mike Williamson stay with the same? Will he be able to get a couple of replacements in that do the same job that those two did? I'm not so sure whether they've got those signings on board at all or not. That's what I'm intrigued by. They've got Will Harris on a 1-year deal after he left Sunderland, for example. That's certainly one name that's cropped up from memory. They've got someone, they've got a defender in from League Two, Stockport. Aaron Martin as well from League Two, Harrogate. So they've tried to get players in from the higher levels who haven't been playing as much, and there might not be names that have lit up our consciences in recent years, but they've certainly got replacements in. Whether they will do enough of a job to keep them up or not, time will tell. But one of them's from Sunderland, so I'm going to say, of course, they're not.
Down they go.
Exactly. I'll move on from that, I think.
Yeah, and again, I think, similar points to that as well. And if you didn't see it, I did actually release a video ranking all the kits from the home team, or the home kits of all the teams in the National League. Got to plug the videos, of course, whilst I'm here. But Gateshead, I did rank bottom out of all the teams that have released a kit, and I think just for that kit alone, they got to go down for me. But Nigel, what about you? What are you saying in terms of the 23rd position?
Yeah, exactly the same. And I like all the thoughts that you two have just said as well. You can't lose that amount of goals from your side and still play in the same way. And what Sean said as well, it will depend on where they get their players from. I know we said about it being a big catchment area, but that's quite a jump from Newcastle. You were in the Premier League down to the National League, and you have got sides in between like Hartlepool and Sunderland, and I know as well. It's quite. We say we get players from Charlton, but we've got quite a broad scope. You've got Charlton, Wimbledon, Leyton Orient. You've got all those teams that we can get players from, but up there it tends to be a bit more tribal. So it's like you're not going to get that filter down, are you? You're not going to get a player going from Newcastle on loan to Sunderland, and then Sunderland going down to Hartlepool. So it doesn't happen. So you kind of difficult to see where they're going to get their players from, really. But like I said, they have signed a few players, and it will depend on who they get in. But at this stage, with the signings they've made, I've got them in 23rd.
Yeah, I think again probably justified, and just a little thing to add in as well, that for the sake of the video, none of us actually did share any of the positions or teams that are in amongst our predictions. So this is completely blind, and this is going to be our complete prediction video. We've had no prior knowledge except from the things we are going to discuss, not the teams included. So to see Maidenhead and Gateshead both be the bottom two teams for me and Nigel, and then of course Sean has got them both from relegation as well, it's potentially quite a telling tale for both of them. But again, there is potential there in some of the signings that have come in. However, you just got to rely on the unknown, which of course may see them relegated in the end. So moving on to 22nd place now, and who have I got? I have got Eastleigh. Eastleigh is the team down there in 22nd for me. For me, I'm not entirely sure how their season's going to fare. They've lost a couple players, which proved quite good for them in the previous season. I think Smart was one of them, who has since left the team. For me, I think they would have expected to kick on a little bit more in previous seasons, Eastleigh, whereas we've not particularly seen that. Again, I think this could be sort of a Maidenhead situation where they might struggle to kind of score goals. It's just a bit of an unconfirmed thing for me. This is kind of, if they're not relegated, flirting with it at least. There's just not enough quality and firepower for me in that squad that's going to see them at least safe. So I think I am going to just chuck them down in 22nd, dipping into that relegation zone. And again, it's kind of relying on those unknown incomings to kind of fill in squad spots that were lost over the summer. So yeah, for me, Eastleigh in 22nd. What about you, Sean?
Well, I will go against your Eastleigh prediction. Well, I think our viewers and listeners will be happy to hear, because I will also mention that Tristan Abrahams has signed for Eastleigh at the start of July, and that is that's a good striker for this
Did
level.
make my predictions before that, so
well, you should do them 5 minutes beforehand on the back of the fag packet, like the rest of us do,
yes,
sir.
no prior practice.
So yeah, I mean, that for me would be a reason for Eastleigh to be, mid-table-ish again, like they frequently do down there when they've not got a leaking pitch. Bless them. I'm going to put out one of my random picks. We mentioned over and underachievers potentially, because I think I've got some foreknowledge of what others you might have picked. So I'm going to pull this one out of the hat and say that Wealdstone would be one of my 4 teams to get relegated this season. Seeing some of the signings that they've made, some of the trialists they've had, like Napa and Mongoy, have come in. Sam Habergum, who's been an England C defender before. Dom Hutchinson from Watford, not Don Hutchinson, obviously. Deji Ware from Charlton on a 6-month loan deal, because, I mean, the 6-month loan deal is also fairly good for this level to get players in. And Olamola on a 1-year deal with an option for a 2nd year, for example. They've made some signings, but I think it's going to be one of those clubs similar to the others we've already mentioned, that they've overachieved for a while. There doesn't seem to be too much room to grow. Certain instances last season, I'm sure, like half of their stand thing collapsed during a match, and then they ended up playing it about 3 blooming hours later. But yeah, for me, Wealdstone would be my surprise pick for a bottom 4 finish, purely because losing their manager last season to Barnet, I believe he went to, and obviously signed a couple of ex-Stones as well, would mean I would put Wealdstone in a bottom 4 potentially, just to mix and spice things up a little bit. You always got to drop.
I would have put Wealdstone in mine, actually. I have actually got them written down as my debatable between themselves and Eastleigh. Too late. This is being filmed on Sunday, the 31st? Yeah, 31st of July, just after the Women's Euros. So I've had a very busy weekend. Not really been paying too much attention to all the transfer ongoings at the moment. So this is kind of my predictions from a few days ago. But Nigel, what about you? Who have you got down in 22nd?
Well, I've got in 22nd Scunthorpe United. Maybe a big shout, but they've come down from the Football League. They've not really got a side together. They've got Keith Hill as manager. Never managed at this level before. I know he's quite an experienced manager at League 2 level, but this is a whole different ball game playing at this level, and has been proved before. With teams like York and Stockport, it's difficult to adapt if you haven't got the players. I mean, they've made some good signings. They've got Andrew Boyce in from Eastleigh, and they've got Elliot Whitehouse in from Forest Green, but attacking wise, they haven't really got a lot in. They're relying a lot on their under 23 players. They've got issues with the owner. The owner wants to sell up, and he's looking for a buyer, and he's saying he's going to be staying away, and it's going to be done by Lee Tomlin, who I think Lee Tomlin is one of their ex-players, but they're having sort of like coffee mornings trying to engage with the fans. But yeah, at this stage, I just can't see where they're going to score the goals to get themselves out of trouble. And like I said before, we saw in our first season in the National League, York dropped straight down and thought it'd be a bit of a cakewalk, and they actually did have experience of playing in the National League, so it's a tough and unforgiving division. So for that reason, I've got Stockport in 22nd place. Scunthorpe, sorry. God. Stockport, yeah.
We'll do League 2 next season. We'll do League 2 next season when we get promoted.
Yeah. But, well, yeah, I mean, completely justified, I think, from both of you there. As I said, Willstone was actually someone that I did have in there before I kind of, on the balance, decided to go for Eastleigh. Nigel, Scunthorpe, I think that's quite justified. I think a lot of their fans are kind of a bit on the edge of what to expect this season. There's quite a few worrying things from them that I've seen in certain groups that I'm a part of online. They do seem to be unconfident of safety in a few places that I've seen, and that actually leads me on to my 21st position pick, and I've also gone with Scunthorpe to go down. So again, very, very similar in terms of our picks at the moment. Yeah, I mean, my reasons were the exact same as yours. Manager's not familiar with the league, team's not familiar with the league. They kind of just, the squad isn't really a unit. They got absolutely ravaged last season in League Two. I think it was rock bottom, wasn't it? Just absolutely battered almost every week, and they really did struggle. And I think they might back themselves a little bit more than they should coming into the National League this season. I think they might think, well, it's the National League, we'll be comfortable, we can just rebuild next season, go again a season after. But, as you said, it's a very unforgiving league, and oftentimes you don't quite get the time that you'd hope for to kind of piece together a squad. You kind of got to get off from the get-go, as otherwise you might end up slipping down. And I think that is kind of my basis behind them going down. The players I've got here, just the squad isn't showing too much in terms of quality. And for me, that is just going to see them go down 21st position for me. So what about you, Sean?
I have got perennial strugglers Aldershot as my last relegation candidate from National League South. Again, they struggle all the time. So I think they've been, I've mentioned others have been on borrowed time for a little while, but I think the definition of borrowed time is Aldershot Town in terms of this level, because they got rid of Waddock, they signed up a National League South squad, and then about 3 weeks before the season started, of the COVID season, they went, "Oh crumbs! Oh, we're actually staying up, are we? Cheers, Gateshead." So to see Gateshead back up again now is quite interesting to see their head-to-head this season with Aldershot, because I don't think it's anything personal, because obviously someone had to take their place in the league, because Lord knows we've seen so many disjointed seasons because of COVID, and then because of all these teams disappearing out of sight in different leagues and demotions, etc. So it'd be good to see them two go head-to-head, but unfortunately I've got them both going down, so they're probably not going to like me for that. But yeah, we could have stayed up instead of them, so it's not a justice thing, a moral crusade on my part. It's purely a case of they've had it coming for quite some time, I think, because they could have easily gone down. I mean, they've signed a few people that they've had on trial. Michael Class is in there. Luke Ashby-Hammond's on a season-long loan from Fulham. He's a goalkeeper. Obviously sounds like a youngster. Who else have they had? There's not too many players that they've retained, to be honest, from what I can see. So, like York signing up Ethan Ross from where he was at Stockport and Aldershot last season, for example. So there's not too much mention of what Aldershot have been doing really online in the last few weeks, and I just think it's symptomatic of how they've been. It's been a downward spiral. They've sort of not picked themselves back up and really achieved, because last season's league position was, again, I think they were one of the ones in the mix in that sort of bottom six area the entirety of the season, and I think it's going to be a similar case for them this season. So I think if we finish above Aldershot, would probably be my pick to be 21st, as they like to play around there so often. I do genuinely think Aldershot would be the side for me that would be the fourth and final relegation pick for myself.
What about you, Nigel? Who's rounding off your relegation spots? And if it's the same as me, if it's Eastleigh, we're going to have a chat, you and me, about this wavelength.
No. I mean, I've looked at it, and I've looked at all of those what you've said, and I was looking at Aldershot and Eastleigh, and the players they've lost. I think for me, it's sort of like you look at last season's league, and considering you had the teams like Dover, Kings Lynn, and Weymouth, were really cut adrift at the bottom in the end. A lot of these teams didn't even get to that magical 50-point mark that they always say you need to get above. Considering that they were so poor, those teams. And you look at them and you sort of think, have they made that improvement? That where are they going to find those extra points from? When the league's going to be that much stronger. Like we just said, you could pick one of 12 teams to go down, really.
Mm.
But the team that I have gone for in 21st place is Yeovil.
Yeovil, okay.
I mean, they're another one that they have issues. They've sort of plummeted in the last few years from the Championship down to this level, and they did make the playoffs in their first year down, but they've steadily got lower and lower and lower in the league, and they've lost a lot of players this post in the pre-season, and they've got a manager in Chris Hargreaves. First time as being a number one. I know he's had experience of being at the Bristol Rovers as sort of like their head of academy and that, he's probably going to get a few players in from Bristol Rovers, but
it's a big step.
They've still got. Yeah, it's a big step. They've managed to retain Tom Knowles, which is one of their standout players from last year, and they've still got Charlie Wakefield there.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you look at it and you think where the goals going to come from. They've got Linton in from Wickham, and he was on loan at Kings Lynn last year. But it's still a big step up from you're looking. Everyone's looking really at this down at this level for that 20 goal a season striker, and I don't think they've got it in their side yet.
Yeah.
And for that reason, that's why I've put them to be in there. But like we say, it could be one of any team. All the teams that we've mentioned of, you can all have a potential case for them, and Dorking are in that mix as well. We haven't mentioned them yet, but they've come up with us. They've got players in from the level below. They haven't really got anyone in from above to, from a higher level to come down. And Mark White's gone on record just saying that, he likes to get his squad sorted at the beginning of the season. He doesn't like to bring in loans. He likes to go with what he's got. So for that reason, there's a lot of teams there, but my final relegation place, I've gone for Yeovil.
So that's some good points you made there, Nigel. Of course, on Yeovil, another obviously quite blatant candidate for relegation. There's very justified opinions there. I mean, they're going to be in and around that fight, I imagine, scraping that area of the table. I think in my predictions I actually did for the Glovers cast, they did contact me about doing a kind of pre-season prediction for Yeovil and Maidstone as well. I think I put us in 16th and I think I put them in 17th, and that was a couple of weeks ago now. So I think in that time, obviously it could have dropped a few positions. So again, more than justified in having Yeovil in your inclusion for relegation. And of course, so that is going to wrap up our relegation predictions for the National League. Again, if you are insulted by that, then grow up. It's just three Maidstone fans' opinions, and hopefully you're not too insulted. But so now let's move on to the promotion account. Playoff spot, sorry. And so on to 7th place for me. Of course, luckily we are only recording this a week before the season starts or thereabouts. So I've been able to kind of clock on to some of the recent transfer ongoings in previous days. And for me, 7th place, I'm going to put Halifax. Now, potentially that is because of my affiliation and my friend that I've got there is a Halifax fan. But he's been able to inform me a lot more on some of their signings that have come in recent days. Particularly, I think they've just signed a League One striker who played 35 games last season. What's his name? Tom Clark, coming in off the back of a pretty good season, although it was towards the bottom of the table. League One experience, 35 games, and he's ex-Halifax as well, so big signing there. They've also got 4 great backup options as well, 4 defensive options as well, which are going to be really important for them. Halifax are a team that does focus quite well on their defence, and I can see them conceding the least goals in this season as well. So for me, I'm going to put them in 7th place. They are lacking a little bit in that forward department, which is why I've not put them any higher. But for me, 7th, I think that's a pretty good prediction. Probably up to 5th, maybe 4th if they do manage to bring in a decent goal scorer. But at the moment, I'm going to stick them down as 7th. What about you, Sean?
Well, I'll mention Halifax briefly in riposte to what you said there, and Emmanuel Disarue signed up for them at the start of the month when he was released by Tranmere Rovers. So possibly a good shout for Halifax. I will announce that I don't have them in my top 7, but I will give another random pick for my top 7. And I've put little known York City in there because we do get the double bounces. We do see this quite a lot. There are a lot of clubs. Certainly, I remember Southampton and Norwich doing this quite some time ago, from League One all the way up to the Premiership. I can't think of too many instances where we've had a National League North side go straight up, but certainly the likes of Stockport, as we mentioned earlier, very likely to have had their time down in the doldrums in National League North relative to the league experience they have. The new stadium they've got there, the new facilities, they've finally been able to get into and make that into a bit of a fortress, frankly. So I'll be very surprised if they're certainly not top half at least. But why not? Again, like I said earlier, throw in a bit of random and York City. I mean, some of the players that they've brought in, they've got some decent experience. Some of them, Michael Duckworth is a very experienced defender. I'm trying to see who else. Alex Whittle signed from Chesterfield, so they're signing players who've been playing at decent level, been playing at the National League level. Ethan Ross, of course, is a goalkeeper that Maidstone have had before, and he's there for them this season as well. So I think they've got an outside chance. Again, it's an infrastructure thing. They've literally had the whole thing ready-made, package, bosh, slapped down into York again to start again, because it was a very good club back in the day. Knocking Manchester United out of the League Cup all those years ago.
Sorry, Nigel.
Before your time, Joseph, obviously, as we always say. But yeah, I mean, since then, I remember going to them one of my first away days in the first season in the National League, and an absolute I don't know how to describe it, without being shut off by Ofcom or off what or off button or whatever. But
YouTube channel strike.
Exactly, it was a terrible stadium, and I'm sure it was loved and it was beautiful in its heyday, but it has been so bad for so long. The fact that it took them so long to get out of there was indicative of the troubles they had getting down into the National League and then National League North. So the fact that they're back up, they've got promoted at the first time of asking within the new confines they find themselves in, there's potentially that feel-good factor. Yeah, so I've convinced myself of my random pick there, York for 7th place. Why not?
Yeah, well, harking back to that kit video I did make as well, York City, as you mentioned, some fantastic kits. Some of the best 3 kits I think I've ever seen. What a combination they've got. I was so heavily debated by that chocolate and cream kit, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. But I'm debating it. Maybe when we take a trip down there, I might have to pick one up from the club shop and just have that in a little collection. But wow, a very justified pick. Again, you've got reasons for it, and that's all we're looking for here. Obviously maybe not the most definite pick in the world, but it's nice to see an outsider getting a chance, and I think York are definitely someone who could outdo some expectations this season. So what about yourself, Nigel?
Well, my pick for 7th place is Woking. I think they came up a few seasons ago. They've sort of established themselves in the National League now, and I think they've recently had a change of not ownership, but they've had investment come into the club, and the directors have moved about a bit, and they seem to have a bit of money there. They've got Darren Saul in from Yeovil. They've brought a few ex-Yeovil players with him, but for me, they've also brought in Podrick Armand, I think you say, big experienced striker. Played for Grimsby when they got up the first time, and he's been playing for Newport, and he's cup exploits. I know he's getting on there 34, but like Hakan said before, if you're a striker, you're a striker. If you know where the goal, the net back of the net is, you just get into that habit. And I also think they've brought in Sid Nelson, a defender that was highly rated a few years ago. Had his injury troubles last year at Northampton and didn't really have a season behind him, but he's coming back to Woking now, and I think they're going to be thereabouts. obviously, like we said with the relegation places, there's a toss-up. There's a few teams in and around that place for seven, not giving too much away with the rest of the picks, but teams like Southend and Bromley and Halifax you've mentioned, they're all going to be in and about it, But for me, the team that I've got in seventh is Woking.
Again, another justified pick. If you're not aware, people, Nigel is a massive Woking fan, aren't you? Nigel is pretty much his second team in the National League.
That was very hard for me to say that.
But yeah, Nigel's not too fond of them. But, if he's putting them in seventh place, he must feel that they're definitely in for a shot due to his, I won't say detest of the club, but perhaps less than favourable.
Don't mention it to Darren Stiles, one of our fellow commentators. Right. He's a big Woking fan.
Doesn't know where YouTube lives, don't worry.
Sorry, Darren. But so there you go. There's our seventh place predictions, and on to sixth now. And my sixth place spot is actually going to be, I think, the most local club to us this season. I think it's Bromley. Is that right? Are they the most local? At least within a couple miles. I'm going
technically Dagenham and Redbridge are the most local, aren't they? Because that's
most local team to Maidstone this season. Bromley, they're a good team. They're looking to push on from the last season. They did, get pretty close towards that top end of the table last year, and I think they're just going to build on that by another couple positions. They've got Adam Marriott, who of course is a good player, and they've also managed to keep their manager on a new deal, Woodman, I think it is, who's secured a new contract there. So of course the motivation, the plan, the project is already in place. There's definitely something in the pipelines in terms of the path ahead for Bromley, and I think part of that new deal is going to be, right, are we going to push on into the playoffs? Are we going to be able to compete? And I think that at the end of the day, I think they might, and that's why I've opted to put them in sixth. So yep, that is going to be my pick for sixth place. What about yourself, Sean?
Well, quickly pick up on a couple of Bromley points there. Obviously, Andy Woodman, the father of former Newcastle goalkeeper Freddie Woodman. Of course, Bromley signing David Smith, that we all know about.
Not talk about,
of course. And main thing to mention, obviously, as well as us signing Alabi off of them, they won the FA Trophy last season as well.
Big
so if you're looking at momentum and things like that, then there's that potential from Bromley. For me personally, I've already mentioned them in the previous video, and the way they built the infrastructure first. Mm-hmm. And again, with how close they came this summer at the Olympic Stadium at the 11th hour for a venue and a match, Solihull Moors, because they are ones to always splash the cash and bring in the players. We've previously mentioned Kelly from Maidenhead coming in there on a 3-year deal. They've got Callum Whelan in on a 1-year contract after they had a trial with the club. He was at Oldham last season. He played in a few friendlies for them, the Moors, this pre-season. Again, they're just one of the more big spending clubs. We mentioned Josh Kelly. There's Jamie Osborne as a 30-year-old. He signed a 2-year deal, keeping them there for another couple of years. Some experienced heads that they've had there from minute one since they've come up from the lower leagues. Reece McNally's another one who's had a contract extended. So they were so close last season that it made sense for them to, there's a couple of forwards they've got rid of, and they've ended up, one of them's gone to Boston United, for example, in National League North. But there's just so many players that they've had. They've always been there throughout this journey that they've had the last few years. And I just think, again, the infrastructure they've got there, the work they've done in the ground. I mean, they've tarmacked the car park, from what I've been told. So, I mean, if they've managed to do that, then I'm sure they've managed to get the inside of the ground looking a lot more Spondulics as well. So, I don't think they'll win in the playoffs because there are stronger sides, even with the experience and the heartache they've had this season. But I would put them very much in that playoff pack and put them sixth for the purposes of our predicting here. So Solihull Moors for me will get in there and then fluff their lines again, bless them.
Well, another team that I've actually got in my top 7, a little bit of a spoiler, but we'll be getting onto them for me later, and again echoing some of the opinions of Sean. But what about yourself, Nigel? Who have you got in 6th position?
Well, I've gone for, let's say the most local team to us in the National League, Dagenham and Redbridge. I just think they're the model of consistency, aren't they? They've got two good strikers in Blenter and Paul McCallum. They haven't really made that many signings. They've got Omar Musa, I think it's in from Weymouth, who was highly rated, but they've managed to retain players like Mo Sagath and a lot of their other players. And I just think they're going to build on that. They've got American owners, I think, as well as Woking. Tim Howard is behind that. Is it Tim Howard behind that consortium that they've got in there? So
Tim Howard, the ex-goalkeeper, Tim Howard.
yeah,
Yes.
Oh wow, that's interesting. Okay.
yeah. So he heads up that. I think they've got not an MLS franchise, but they've next level down from MLS as well. So
Okay.
they've got a bit of money behind them, and it's just that consistency, like we said about Mason in the previous podcast. Consistency goes a long way at this level. If you can build on that and just add that little bit of quality, a little bit of stardust in it, and I think they just missed out last year by a point. So I think with that little bit of extra quality they've got in there, and if they can keep all their players fit, again, like we've said, if McCallum had quite a bit of time out last year in the middle of the season around Christmas time with an injury, but if they've just got strength in depth as well. So I just think they're just going to push on this year and get into those playoff places. So for me, the sixth place is Dagenham Ridge.
Yeah, a team that I actually did. I had them 7th until Halifax made a couple of good defensive signings, so I bumped them up and chucked them out. But as you say, the consistency they've got, I think they've got the top assister from last season in Weston. I think he was one of them at least, if not the top. Getting on a bit now, but again, still putting out performances. And of course, McMahon is the manager, another name in the non-league who, of course, has got a bit behind him. So again, building on consistency, another good pick for the top 7. And so on to our 5th position now in the playoffs, and I've opted for another pretty local team to us in Maidstone, and that is Southend. Pretty much a dark horse, probably an overachiever, I think you could count that as, when it comes to a few opinions around the National League. But for me, they're a pretty impressive team. They've got Mayer as manager, someone who's quite good as well. They've signed a good striker in Mooney, I think it is as well, who's picked up a few goals last season. And they've signed Lomas as well at centre-back, who, whilst unproven, was part of a defence last season that I think only conceded about 20 goals in a season. So, just reinforcing the team, and they've got a pretty obvious direction. They've got good ability to recruit players as well, of course, with Still, as we know, involved in the squad there and his connections. So, yeah, I think they're just going to be able to build on that. And for me, I'm going to stick them up in 5th place. Sean?
Would you like my 5th place then, sir?
Yeah, that would be all right, yeah.
Right as well. I've gone for another little-known team called Oldham Athletic, which I know might be seen as controversial and might raise collective eyebrows here and on the tinterwebs. But, they have signed quite a lot of players that have piqued my interest. Zane Francis Angol from Stockport, loan last season, released by Hartlepool this summer. So obviously he was involved in a promotion campaign for Stockport County last season. Lois Maynard is another one who was at Stockport last season, and he's won promotion twice from the 5th tier, of course, with Salford before that, and with Stockport last season. So they are signing players who are proven winners at this level. Dan Gardner being another player they've re-signed on a 2-year deal. So there's some players they've kept, which I know you'd probably say from Oldham and Scunthorpe terms with how terrible last season was for the pair of them. You'd think, how much are you going to chuck out of baby and bathwater, frankly, are you? You're wondering how many players do you want to keep from an absolute poop storm from last season and bring in so much more. So there's possibly a little bit of consistency there from the better parts of last season. With the likes of Gardner, but Angol and Maynard there being signed. There's about 9 or 10 signings they've made, so clearly they've cleared out a lot of deadwood. And I think the less said about Rothwell, Frank Rothwell, I think it is the new owner of Oldham, and his wonderful video, the less we say about that, the better. So 5th for me is the lovely Rothwell chaps at Oldham.
Well, I mean, as you said, it's a bit of an outsider and probably going to surprise a few people. I've actually got Oldham, I think, around that bottom half of the mid-table spots. But, again, it's pretty justified in terms of what they are as a club. Obviously, they've got the new ownership. They brought in a lot of players and hopefully are going to be able to kick on at least for their own regards in the upcoming season. They might be able to adjust a little bit better in terms of their new ownership. We'll have to wait and see. But Oldham in 5th place for Sean. What about yourself, Nigel?
Me, I've got Boreham Wood. I don't think they're the most popular club within the league, but you have to say that in sorry,
you don't say.
But you have to say, that like we mentioned before, they've had their FA Cup run. In Luke Garrard, they've got a experienced manager at this level now. He's been to the playoffs before. He knows what it takes, and they've actually brought in some good signings. Danny Elliott scored goals for Boston in the league below. Danny Newton, who was at Solihull last year, they brought him in. Zach Brunt from Sheffield United, who had a loan spell at Southend last year, and he's highly rated. Alfie Egan, of course, was playing up the road for Ebbsfleet last year, but he's had experience in that league above as well before, so they've brought him in, and that's on top of the signings they've already got, players like Tyrone Marsh and very much built on a defensive unit as well. David Stevens, and Fairfield at the back. I don't know if they're going to bring in. I haven't heard who they've got as a goalkeeper yet, but you just know that he's going to get somebody inexperienced there. So I think they've invested the money well that they've earned from the FA Cup round last year. So for me, I've got Boreham Wood in the playoffs.
Another team who for me was actually just outside, I've got them down in 8th. So again, someone who for me could have snuck in there. There's a few of those players who are kind of teams who are teetering on the edge for me. As with relegation, there's obviously quite a few more candidates down there. But when you say Boreham Wood, I don't think too many people would turn their nose up at that. As you say, they kind of got the stuff in place already. They've spent pretty well. And I think that's a pretty good prediction for 5th. So on to 4th position now and creeping up the table a little bit more. I've gone for someone who's already been mentioned, and that is Solihull Moors. After last season, of course, in the playoffs, did fall short towards the end at the final hurdle. But for me, a team who is going to consistently be in there no matter what, middle of the playoffs, and they're a pretty good squad all around. They've got Josh Kelly now, who of course bagged quite a few goals for a pretty poor Maidenhead team last season. So again, I think he'll be pretty good. They have signed Reed as well. So they've got a couple of good attacking options there. They've lost Hudlin, who didn't really feature too much, but obviously must have got some sort of a fee for him as he's gone to Championship Huddersfield now, I think it is. So again, I think they've just got that kind of consistency in recent seasons and the playoffs last year. They're going to be able to come back. I think they've also got the young player of the year from last season in Aspara. Not entirely sure how to pronounce his name.
Yeah, Sabara.
Another good player who hopefully as he matures is going to be able to kind of carry the team forward in terms of an attacking creator for them. So yeah, Solihull Moors for me in 4th. What about yourself, Sean?
Nice to see the Solihull Moors love being continued there. That's good. And one other thing to mention is that in recent years, whether it's Tim Flowers or Neil Ardley in charge, they have gone on some absolutely woeful runs during lots of these seasons, and yet they still somehow managed to get in the playoffs. And like similar runs to like what Maidstone had last season, like 25, 28 game unbeaten runs, being like bottom 6 in October and stuff, and just phenomenal club for that sort of thing. I, in 4th place, have got Southend. And I know this might cause a bit of controversy because I think it's a bit Marmite in terms of who's there and what they're doing and what players they may or may not be trying to sign. But, I mean, it's just, I think they steadied the ship incredibly well last season with Still and Collymore and people who know football, who love football, who care about football rather than the business side of things. Trying to asset strip and whatever else was being done. So there's, a lot of names that have been linked to them, players that have have come in. A lot of youngsters that they've signed as well, 18, 19, 19, 21, their ages, not their names, obviously. There's lots of players linked with them. Chris Rea, not the old one, obviously, because I think even he's too old now for the National League. Possibly not for South, because we got Elakobe for a bit there, didn't we? But no, Christopher will be even older than Elakobe, wouldn't he? Just about. But yeah, Wes Fonguk as well was another one they've signed from Barnet. So players like that who've known the division fairly well. And I just think, yeah, the way they settled that last third of last season just poured any water on any fires they had potentially going wrong at the club. I think it's a very slow, steady transition. But from where they finished last season, I don't think it's too many more points because the run that they went on, I think they had a good 15, 18 game unbeaten run at one point once Collymore and Stella and others had come in behind the scenes to then let the former Weymouth manager in to work his business tactically on the pitch. And they lost a few matches towards the end of the season, but I think the deck chairs had unfurled themselves with the beach towels, to be honest. So I think they'll get a lot more drive out of them this season, and that will see them just miss out on a top 3 spot.
Well, again, I've got them in 5th, so it's hard to argue with 4th spot. As you say, they did build on their manager coming in last season after a pretty poor start and first half or so to the season. So they did manage to turn things around, and hopefully going to build on that for their sake. What about you, Nigel? Who have you got in 4th place?
Same as you, Solihull Moors. I like Neil Ardley as a manager. I think I think he was harshly done by Notts County. He had him in a promotion place, or in the playoffs at least in his first season, and they got rid of him. The new owners came in and got rid of him. But he sort of stabilised Solihull Moors, took over from Tim Flowers, or Tim Flowers was there just before him, but he's completely changed the style of play that they've got. Like you say, Sabara, I think he was voted the young player of the year last year. They've managed to retain him. Their strike frightening. You think they've just signed Josh Kelly. They've got Andrew Dallas there, who incidentally I think he got 5 goals in one half against Dover. I mean, he was similar to Barham. He didn't score a goal early on in the season, but for whatever reason, for injury or just not having a run in the team, and then he just come in, got those 5 goals against Dover, and he was just on fire for the second half of the season. And then you say they brought in Alex Reid as well, and I think they're strong at the back as well. They've got experienced defenders for this level, and also their goalie. I think he's probably one of the best in the league. His name is Curtin Boot, is it? I think his name is. He's been there for a few years now, and he's recognised by most of his peers as sort of like the best, the most consistent goalie in the league. So for that reason, I think they're going to be thereabouts again, and I've put them in 4th place.
Again, more than justified, similar as myself, and of course Sean's got them in the playoffs as well. Just building on the consistency that they've had for the last few years, and they've obviously got some better players coming through like Spara, so it'll be good to see how they perform in the upcoming season. Now we're going to get on to our top 3, and I would be very surprised if we don't have the same top 3 teams. Maybe a different order slightly, but if you haven't included the 3 that I've got, that means they're outside the playoffs and something's gone catastrophically wrong somewhere. So for me, 3rd place, I've actually got Notts County, and again, there's going to be a few people that are going to disagree with that, but for me, they've got this team which they're putting together. They've got new signings, which we mentioned already, from Gateshead, who are obviously fantastic goal scorers, but it's that step up into the National League. They've already got a couple of players there who are capable of scoring goals. They've got great midfield, great defence. Everything is there in place, but they're just going to have to kind of rely on some of these new signings to perform as well as they're expected to get them up the table, like in terms of that first, second spot. But for me, it's not 100% of the time that 100% of your signings are all going to perform exactly how you imagine them to do so. So for me, just going to fall short of that top and second spot. I think it is going to be close between the top 3 teams, but for me, Notts County in 3rd position. Sean, 3rd
Well, I'm glad.
place.
Yes, I'm glad we can mix things up a little bit then, because I have Chesterfield in 3rd place. Again, signings they've made, fairly simple, fairly straightforward. Again, another one of those teams that fell short in the playoffs. I think it might have been Halifax that knocked them out, or Solihull. It was one of those two. I can't remember off the top of my head, which is very, very poor. It was Solihull, wasn't it? Yeah. I mean, some of the signings they've made have been some quite exciting ones. I mean, Jezeran Chegbullum from Matlock Town. He played for AC Milan's age group teams and some time at Sheffield Wednesday as well. Who else have they signed? They lost Jim Kellerman to Woking, so someone like Kellerman would be a good signing for Nigel's tip of Woking from earlier on. An Albanian under-21 midfielder from Ipswich, and a Port Vale Brazilian goalkeeper. So they've very varied in what they're bringing in, Chesterfield. But again, they have lost a lot of experience, but I do think they've got some consistency there as well. Ollie Banks is a very good signing from Barrow. They've signed him up there. I just think it's going to be their time. We've mentioned clubs already saying that they're going to struggle because that's what they've perennially done. And we've said it for similar teams at the top end as well. And you're just wondering, Chesterfield will be there or thereabouts again. And obviously I'll give other reasons why when we go on about top scorers a little later, for example. And we all know who we're talking about there. But... Oh, of course. Word, mouth, out thereof. Amongst others, we love you, fella. Their friendly performances have been very good. Ironically, I've just double checked. They actually played Matlock Town in a friendly this pre-season as well. So there are some clubs that play their pre-season friendlies with a view to nicking half their squad as well. Yeah, so not all of us do that, but it is a decent idea at times. But there's indeed, amongst others. I mean, they've got Maguire at the back. He's probably the better of the 2 defenders the last couple of years from the Maguire family, in all honesty. Santi,
sorry, Nigel.
Danny Rowe, Shimanga, Quigley, of course, the legend that he is. And Cook, again, he's a boss who knows how to get the best out of sides wherever he's been. Ipswich, Wigan, he's done fairly well. Probably not that well with Ipswich, to be honest, but I don't know anybody who's been to Ipswich in the last 10, 15 years that has done well. Cursed club. Sorry, Bobby. For me, my money, 3rd place, and we'll come on to the main reason why for that later on, but Chesterfield for me.
Well, another team who is definitely going to be up there fighting, and I've got them up there as well. I won't quite spoil who I've got top yet, but we'll get onto that shortly. What about yourself, Nigel? Who have you got in 3rd?
I've gone with you, with Notts County.
The wavelengths.
Yeah, I just think in the last few weeks, they've lost. Cal Roberts has gone to Aberdeen. I think he was a big player for them. If anybody follows our own Regan Booty and Sam Corn, they're good friends there, and I think it was a move that was imminent. I think it's good for him. But he scored 16 goals from that right-hand side last year, and he was their penalty taker. So I think that's going to be a big loss for them. And I know they've got in some good strikers from the league below in Langstaff and Scott, as we previously mentioned. But there's going to be big pressure on them. It's not like Barham and Seager that were top scorers in our league, and Rutherford. They're not performing for clubs that are in that spotlight. They've got such expectation on them to hit the ground running. So it's how they cope with that. And also they've got a new manager in.
Yeah.
They've lost their previous manager. He's gone to Forest Green. So he's never managed at this level before. So, it's like when you look at other managers that we are out there, like in Paul Cook and Bill Parkinson, for that experience. He hasn't got that experience. I know he's sort of like come from the under-23s level, but it's like you say with players, it's a different level when there's 3 points on the line, and it's such a big crowd and such a big expectation at Notts County, as there is with the other clubs. But, I just think for that reason, I think they're going to just miss out on that top spot this year, and I think they're going to be third.
Yeah, it's an incredible jump, isn't it, from the National League South, and especially, if you compare the following that Gateshead got last season to that of Notts. I mean, it's just such an astronomical difference in terms of the people that do come and the expectation on each club. It's going to be quite a lot of pressure on both of those new boys up top for Notts. So again, that is also pretty much the reason why I've put them where I've put them. Okay, so on to second position now in the National League, and of course this is obviously going to reveal who we think is going to be top, but I think it might be pretty obvious who we're going to go for anyway. However, in second place I have got Chesterfield, a team that's already been mentioned by yourself, Sean, in third place. And for me, the main reasons behind that are going to be Paul Cook, and I've got a friend who is a very big Ipswich fan, so he has given me a little bit of information on some of the players and, of course, manager at Chesterfield this season. And the big thing for me is going to be the inclusion of Dobra, that Albanian international you did mention, Sean, earlier on. I've been told by my friend, the Ipswich fan, shout out to Reggie, that this player is someone who could quite easily cut it up in League One. He's got no idea why he's dropped down to the National League. I mean, money, of course, is probably going to be a big indicator of why he's joined, but in terms of ability, this is someone who I've been told is a wizard on the ball, and this is from the team that he's just left. He's quite disappointed that he's left. He thought this could be someone who will come through the team at Ipswich and be able to help them out in their league. So again, he's going to be a big player for them this season. They're going to have high hopes for him, and of course, Shimanga as well. If he stays fit, he's guaranteed goals. There's no doubt about that. He's proven that last season. Unfortunately, did miss some of the more important games of the season for Chesterfield out with injury, but if he does stay fit, I think they're going to be in second place for me. So, Sean, I'm pretty sure I know who your second spot's going to be, but tell us anyway.
Well, who do you reckon it is then, Smarty Pants?
Well, I want to say Notts, but it's you, so I'll go Wrexham.
Correct. Yes, I have put Wrexham in at second, mainly because all their business has been done last month. I don't think there's been too much of a mention of what they've got up to this month. With Wrexham, I still just think there's that slight issue with everything behind it. Because, I mean, goodness knows, supporting teams that have been backed by high-profile celebrity-ish takeovers are always popular by everyone, especially the other teams in the league. So I know we look forward to seeing Wrexham down at the Gallagher this season, and I haven't got a Deadpool costume. You'll all be pleased to know it will still be the standard amber suit.
I'll be wearing mine on the commentary next month.
Exactly, of course, with a little leak on it as well.
Of course.
Or daffodil, or both. But yeah, seriously, just the depth that they have. I mean, they're signing players from Oxford United. They're signing first-team players from League One. If they're not in the top three, there's something very wrong. You've mentioned the experience of Parkinson there earlier, Nigel, as well. The amount of money they spaffed, probably the last spaff I'll have during this recording. The money they spent on Ollie Palmer, for example. Another reason why they're going to be up there, because just the sheer volume of goals that they can score, never knowing when they're beaten. So I think they'll be there. Whether they get up in the playoffs this time or not, they'll be top three. They'll be second for my money. So, yeah, very exciting to see them. Looking forward to them.
Again, justified. I think it's going to be hard to tell who's going to pip who to the title. I think it's going to be within a matter of points this season. I think, there's just going to be this whopping great gulf between this kind of top three and this rest of the league. I think, Nigel, you was talking about before we went live about the categorisation you've got of teams in this division. You've kind of got bottom, not quite bottom, right up there. And I think that's just how it's going to play out. And I mean, Wrexham second place, justified. What about yourself, Nigel? Who have you got in second?
I've gone with Sean and I've gone for Wrexham.
Wow, you're going to leave me to justify a title win on my own.
To me, you can't. I mean, we've seen it before, and I know they've got a lot of money, but that hangover, that playoff hangover, whichever way you gloss it up and say it, they bottled it last year. You know, what I mean,
Massively.
they should never. For a team of that money, you can't just switch on and switch off. They shouldn't have been in that position where they were that many goals down to Dover. You know, something not right there that players. You know, we say about the Premier League players. You know, they just swan about. You know, and the lack of effort, but be that in that position against Dover, and they got out of it, but then to go and lose. You know, they had Stockport there really. That if they'd have won them games, Stockport dropped points, but they didn't capitalise on it. And then they go and lose the FA Trophy final to Bromley, which we talked about, and then they went into the playoffs. If they'd have won that FA Trophy final, I believe they probably would have gone on and beaten Grimsby and then gone up. They'd have got that bounce, but they just died a death in the last game against Dagenham, and they just lost all momentum. You've got all these quality players, and it's keeping them all happy. And I just think they're going to fall short again.
Well, that leaves me to try and defend Wrexham in their title bid for the season, and I have got Wrexham up in first. I'll actually show you my my justifications for them winning the league. It might be back to front, but that says expectation right there, and that is the only reason I've got them winning the league over Notts and Chesterfield, because if they don't, it might be a catastrophe because their fans won't be happy, their players won't be happy, their manager's probably going to lose his job, their owners won't be happy, and it's going to cause all sorts of problems if they don't go up. And of course, they kind of bottled last season. Well, they definitely bottled last season. Obviously, lost the trophy final as well. So it really was not a good end to the season, all things considered, for Wrexham last year. But for me, if it's not this year, I think they might fall apart next year. And I think they probably know that as well. I think they're going to have to understand that if it's not now, they're going to be in a lot of trouble later. So that is going to be my main justification for sticking them up there. Of course, obviously they've got the squad to back it up, but as you both mentioned, it is going to be, can they keep them all happy? Maybe the promise of League Two football next season is what's going to keep them all satisfied with how this season plays out. But again, for me, it's just a now or never situation. And that's why I've picked Wrexham to finish first. Sean, Notts?
Indeed. To be or not to be, that is
Indeed.
The question. Well, it were nobler for who it was they thought they could hold on to, as opposed to the ones they had to sell on, or some other paraphrasing of Shakespeare there.
Shakespeare.
I share a birthday with him, but he also died the day he was born, so I'm not a fan of my birthday at times.
Yeah,
but anyway,
it doesn't bode well for you. But
no.
Notts.
Happy birthday. Yes, Notts County. Why? Again, the Cal Roberts thing, I won't say has caught me on the hop, because there's been talk about him, I think probably from like March, April time, because like you say, Booty's good friends with him. And it seems like a move is always going to happen, regardless of whether they got to League Two or not. From the in-field bants they have with one another on the online Twitter spheres and the Instagrams, whatever the kids do these days, I wouldn't know. I think they would be well to reinvest that money, and there will always be players that will be available. They might not hit the ground running, but I feel like they've got enough experience in that squad, like the likes of Wooten. If he has a fully fit season, he might be able to get more than the 5 he got last season. I mean, he played most of the games, to be perfectly honest, which is the really strange. Sorry, he got 19. I'm looking at the wrong column. Never mind. He banged in a load of goals, Wooten, and he'll bang in a load more because, he only missed a couple of games. So that's why I put them there, why I did, because they've got lots of goal scorers on that side. Wooten's there. My player of the year, who I think it would be Ruben Rodriguez. Is another reason I've put them top, because he is a very, very skillful Portuguese attacking player. Just edged out Wooten last season in the goal scoring front. Yes, the loss of Roberts will be felt, because he was third in their rankings for the goals. So yeah, Notts County for me to win the league, because Ruben Rodriguez will be that damn good, and he's been that damn good for several years. With Notts County, and a player I've always admired. And if we ever had that sort of cash sloshing about from a lottery win, he'd be one of the first signings I would make for Maidstone, if, of course, that doesn't upset the apple cart in the way that Mr. Hakan plays.
There you go, a pretty good justification for Notts finishing top. And I'm sure, Nigel, you're just going to compound my misery of putting Wrexham first with an even more staunch defence of Notts. But go ahead, see what you've got to offer.
Oh, I've gone for Chesterfield, haven't I? Because I've already had Notts. So I had Notts in third,
Oh, I thought you
Wrexham.
had Chesterfield in third. I thought you agreed with me,
No,
not Sean. Okay, well,
no.
Chesterfield then. Okay, we've all gone
Yeah,
different. Okay, that makes it a
yeah,
bit
we
better
have all gone different. And
Chesterfield.
I think to be honest with you, that's just the reason. That's just how close these three teams are going to be.
Yeah,
Um,
I can barely separate them myself, so.
I mean, the only reason I've gone for Chesterfield over the other two is Paul Cook, and he's managed that club before, so he knows the culture of the club. He got them up to the playoffs in League One, I believe. He promoted out of League Two. Um, Again, another experienced manager. Same, it can go one of two ways, can't it? It's like we said for all the others. They've got a player in Shamanga. You know, he's been out injured. We know what his goal scoring record was like before he got his injury. I think he was only just picked to the league, the Golden Boot, in the last few weeks of the season. So, you know, considering he's only been there for half the season, he's always scored goals at this level. If he comes back and hits the ground running, they could be straight up there again. And then equally, it could go the other way. If they don't make a good start, the expectation there, it could just, at the end of the day, one of these three teams is going to miss out.
Yeah.
If not both of them. So that's what they've always said about the National League, isn't it? It just becomes a bit of a logjam, and it's just you could basically do it on a flip of a coin, couldn't you? They've all got money to spend. Yeah, I mean, if Shamanga comes back and hits the ground running, you can see him going off in January and getting for a big fee in League One or top end League One team easily. So they've all got money to spend. They've all got all three managers have got contacts at a higher level. It's just it doesn't bode well for the rest of the league. But I'm sure it's for the supporters of those clubs, it's going to be quite an entertaining season.
Unless anybody's got anything else to add, we're going to crack on to our top scorer for the season and player of the year. I know we've kind of let it slip as we do the predictions, but anybody else got anything to say?
No.
Crack on with those players, Joseph.
Let's crack on then. So, top scorer, I think I've already let it slip. I can't remember if I did. Shamanga. Chesterfield, he's going to be my top scorer of the season. I think just the goal scoring record that he had last year before injury was just sublime. I mean, imagine a full season of that, and of course the quality that they managed to add, of course, with Dobra now feeding balls in, that's only going to allow him to get more opportunities. So for me, he will be the top scorer in the league, and I've kind of cheaped out on the player of the year, I won't lie. I do feel that those in that sort of position to pick player of the year often opt for the same player, as we've seen with Kevin De Bruyne syndrome in the Premier League. And I think as Wrexham are going to win the league, in my opinion, Paul Mullin will get the player of the year again. So again, cheaping out a little bit following on from last year's player of the year, but you can't really go wrong with a double winner. So Sean, what about yourself?
Well, I've mentioned my player of the year, of course, for Ruben Rodriguez. He'll be there or thereabouts for league top scorer. But again, the amount of set plays that he puts in from the wide areas for the likes of Wotton and Co to nod in. And the free kicks that he scores as well are very nice. So I think he would be a very strong shout for me for Player of the Year, which obviously goes well with saying they would probably win the league with or without Cal Roberts. For me, I've hedged my bets and gone for an either or, which I know would probably be frowned upon. But as well as Shimanga, which is the obvious choice that everybody will make, I'm sure. And on the flip side of that, as well as Shimanga, Ollie Palmer for me, because you've got to have one player from each of those three teams be circulating around your Player of the Year and top goal scorer, because we had a top goal scorer and Player of the Year last season. So did most teams that got promoted. It's, you're not going to, statistically, I'd say you should pick Bruno Guimaraes as Player of the Year, but he didn't have a full season and it's Newcastle and no one cares. But, you have to take the whole season, the whole set of statistics and data about these players and drive forward with that and say, over a 46, 38, whatever game season, this is what he's delivered. This is how many involvements he's had. He's bloody good. And for me, Rodriguez will be just short in terms of goals, but he'll add more assists than the likes of Shimanga at Chesterfield and Ollie Palmer, who is obviously, a steal. But the amount that he scored once he signed was just ridiculous. So again, if you stretch Palmer out over a full season at National League level, I think he'd give Shimanga a run for his money. So that's why I'm saying I can't separate those two. And it may well be that, it might be a Pop Mead situation where both of them are there at the last final hurdle and one cramps before the match and the other one gets pulled off halfway through the last match of the season and they stay the same number anyway. So that's what I think might happen. And that's me done, I think.
Nigel?
Yeah, probably echoed everybody else really, but the top scorer, I would probably say if you're not going to go for somebody like Shimanga, an outside bet would be Josh Kelly. I think he's just got his contract. I mean, like we said, if any of these top guys, Mullin included in that, really, if they're up there and then they're scoring the goals, but the team's not performing, you can see somebody from League Two having a bet on them in January.
Yeah.
But I think with Josh Kelly, obviously, he's just gone to Solihull, like we said, on a 3-year contract. So I think they've probably got him for the season. And they've got the players in and around that team, as they proved with Dallas last year. If you get a run in that team, you're going to get the balls in the box. You're going to get the assists. You're going to get the through balls. And I think that's just their style of play is made for somebody like Josh Kelly. So as an outside bet, I would say him. And then, player of the season, again, it's going to be coming from one of the top teams. You could pick anyone, couldn't you, really? I mean, Elliot Lee, I suppose, he's probably got a point to prove coming in at Wrexham. I mean, if they play him in that style that he played in that hole behind the front two, you'll think he's going to be quite, if they do go up, he's going to be quite integral into their play and how they perform, getting the balls to Mullin and Palmer. So, somebody like that, I would say maybe player of the season. But, there's so many players in the league, isn't it? It's just going to be who gets a run and who has the most impact on games and for over a course of time. Injuries and suspensions come into it, like we said with Shimanga. Barring the injury, he'd have walked the Golden Boot last year, but he'd get that, and it impacts on your season. So.
Well,
it'll be exciting, I think. Strap yourself in and enjoy the ride.
Yeah, I mean, God knows, who knows where anybody's going to finish next season. I think every single position in the National League is very highly debatable next year. Obviously, in this video, you've seen myself and Nigel agree on a lot of the relegation positions, but when it comes to who's winning the league, we differ in, same as Sean. The playoffs, we've all got some similar teams in there, but again, we've all got a few additions in there as well, such as Dagenham and York as well, including the playoffs. So it's good to have these varying opinions, and of course, nobody, unless someone's had some sort of message from above before the podcast, knows where anyone's going to finish next season. So it will be interesting to see where everything ends up. So I think that's going to be it for today, the second edition of the Off Air podcast. And thanks, of course, to my guests, Sean, Sker and Nigel, for joining me. Sean, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Nigel, of course, thank you for joining
Thank you.
us today. If you haven't already, then do go and check out the first edition of this podcast, the Off-Air podcast covering Maidstone. If you're not a Maidstone fan, it still may suit you. Learn a little bit more about some potential opposition in the National League this season. And of course, hopefully you can enjoy some of the other content on the channel as well. But hopefully in the next time we do one of these videos, we will be joined by Connor as well, who some of his inputs did feature in the last video. And if you did enjoy this podcast, of course, then do, as I said, check out some of the other stuff on the channel. Subscribe if you did enjoy it that much. And of course, like the video as well. If you've got any ideas for more podcasts in the future, then leave a comment below. And hopefully we'll catch you all in the next one.